Tales of Mithrym.
Skeleton Crew, read by Lorenzo, Part 3, Tall Tale. Screams and cries erupted from the crew as the creature in the net began to tear at the ropes. A pair of long, thin arms could be seen, each with a set of sharp, piercing nails at the end of its long, silvery fingers. There was a mad scramble as each sailor hurried backwards and began grabbing at any makeshift weapon they could find. Derville reached behind her back and pulled a small hatchet from her belt. Elvin thought fast. There was no time to go and get his sword from the cabin. He looked quickly around the deck and spotted a fishing harpoon in a rack mounted nearby. He ran over and pulled it out, spinning on the spot, flung it hard at the creature. The blade dug deep into the deck with a thud. The mermaid was free of the netting now and had begun to move towards them. It could now be made out in full. A long, slender body that began with a head, the face of which might have been considered beautiful were it not for the enormous teeth that could now be seen as it gasped angrily. Long, green-blue hair hung in wet lines down and onto its shoulders and back. Its skin was a pale, silvery blue, almost like a shark, but with a faint pink hue showing through as blood pumped hard, driving the creature forward. From the waist down was a long, scaled tail ending in two fins. The creature bounded forwards, pulling at the deck with its arms and pushing forward with its tail. It gnashed its teeth at each member of the crew as they backed away sharply. Ducky squared up in front of the mermaid. It looked up at him and hissed at him, spraying water up into his face. He roared back and it seemed, for a moment, to pause. "Grab the nets!" Elvin called. Several sailors rounded the creature and seized the sodden net. Others ran along the deck to take hold of the other. As one sailor passed it, he screamed in pain as the creature's long nails cut through his leg. Falling to the ground, everyone could see the bright red of fresh blood spilling onto the deck. The mermaid's expression was almost a smile as it rounded on the fallen man. Another sailor jumped between them and raised an oar menacingly. "Back!" she shouted and made to smack the creature in the head. A silvery arm came up and grabbed the oar hard by the shaft. The creature pulled hard and the sailor fell back as it dropped from her grip. The creature lunged at the two, then suddenly gave a blood-chilling scream as it tipped to the side, an axe buried in its shoulder. Derville pulled the hatchet back, then kicked the mermaid hard so that it rolled across the deck. Thick, dark blue blood seemed to ooze from the wound as the mermaid righted itself and raided to attack again. Derville and Ducky stood firm and stared it down just as Elvin and two of the sailors ran up with a net and flung it hard over the creature. It landed true and they quickly made to bind it when shouts and cries from across the ship suddenly drew their attention. "Another!" one cried. "And another!" came a voice from the other end of the ship. Two more of the creatures were crawling their way up the side of the vessel and within moments had flung themselves onto the deck. The captured mermaid began to wail a noise that was soon echoed by the other two. "Ian, preserve us!" cried the injured sailor as he looked about. "We're not done yet," Ducky shouted. "Quick, Derville, you stay with this one. Elvin, you take that one. I'll go for the other." There was a fire in Ducky's eyes as he looked about. Elvin did not stop to argue but ran hard across the deck. "And do what?" Derville called after them. Ducky had reached one of the other two mermaids and hurriedly picked up one of the larger boat hooks from the sides. He brought it down hard on the creature's body, seeming for a moment to stun it as it tried to find purchase on the deck. "Push!" he roared. Several of the crew rallied to him. Taking a hold of the staff of the boat hook, they all rammed hard into the creature and began to push it towards the edge. Its body, still wet from the sea, slipped and slid easily through its claws, arced towards them. Then, with a roar and a splash, it fell fast and hard back into the waters below. "Well, come on then!" Derville shouted to the sailors near her. "You saw how it's done!" She picked up the dropped oar and brought it down hard on the mermaid underneath the net. A silvery hand came up to meet it and held it tight. Derville felt the arm try to pull her down with the oar. She twisted with it so that the end of the oar found its way onto the creature's side. Bracing hard, she then began to push at it. The creature screamed with pain and anger. "Come on!" Derville shouted again. This time the sailors joined beside her and working together to brace the oar hard against it, they began to slide the creature towards the edge. Once again, with a satisfying splash, it fell fast into the waves below. Elvin, having reached the final creature, looked around for something to fight it with. There was nothing at this end of the ship save boxes and barrels. The mermaid eyed him hungrily and began to charge at him, bounding across the decking. There was nothing for it. He knelt down and braced as best he could, then grabbed it by its shoulders as it careened into him. The face was inches from his own, and it screamed. Its own arms came round and held Elvin hard by his shoulders. Sharp claws cut into his back, and he could feel blood run down, but he held firm. The two began to wrestle, pushing hard against each other, neither seeming to gain any ground. Cries and shouts came from all over the ship as people began to spy the other two climbing back up to the deck. Elvin began to shudder as the pain in his back was causing him to falter, just as the whole ship gave a great lurch. Elvin and the creature were both thrown hard towards the edge. Elvin felt everything fall away as he tumbled, the smell of salt water coming up to meet him. He screamed at the pain in his shoulder as a hand grabbed his own tight. "No, you don't," came the voice of Ducky as he braced hard against the railings and pulled Elvin back up. A splash behind him sounded the fall of the last of the mermaids. The other two dropped from the sides to join it as the whole ship began pitching through the waves. The wind had finally come.
Tales of Mithrym are written by Jimmy Clephane. Mithrym is a fantasy world built for the Dungeon Room role-playing game system. To find out more about the world of Mithrym, or to try out the game, go to www.mithrym.com.